All right, welcome back into this week's Racing Pigeon podcast with Kevin and Wes, episode 11 on season 1. Getting a lot of good feedback, getting a lot of followers on Facebook. Kevin, you talked about doing some live events coming up. I think you're going to simulcast on what, Facebook?
Yeah. I gave it a test run last week. So I have some software that I downloaded, and I am not a technical person, as you know, Wes, but
I'm here for backup.
I got it to work. We're going to simulcast on YouTube and the Facebook at the same time under
Awesome.
Racing Pigeon Podcast, both under Racing Pigeon Podcast. But I'm planning to live stream some races when we're waiting for the birds to come home. I'll pop on live about 15 minutes or so before I expect my birds to arrive, and just kind of let people just kind of see the experience of what it's like waiting for the birds. And
awesome.
If they're late, we'll be terrified together, where's my birds kind of thing. And so it might be fun, might be boring, but we'll try it for a couple races and see if people enjoy it.
Awesome. That sounds great. So what are we talking about this week? And I know we got to take a break here for a second because you actually have some predators in your yard trying to take some of your birds. But what are we going to be talking about on this week's podcast?
Yeah, so this week I thought we would hit on health. We haven't really touched on health much at all. We've talked about what do you feed a pigeon and where do you keep a pigeon, how they, proper housing for them and stuff like that. But I want to focus a little bit on health now and not go too deep this week, but maybe just talk about how do you know when your pigeon's sick, versus when it's healthy? What are some signs that you would look for to indicate, hey, this pigeon's got a problem,
Okay.
And then I think the other segment we'll do is maybe just focus on loss, just have a real discussion about, losing pigeons, how you lose them, what it feels like, how to recover, things like this. So
okay, sounds good. Well, we'll take a break here and hear from our sponsors and give you a chance to check your loft, make sure that predator's not back out there, and we'll be right back.
Electrofly Plus. Champions take flight with Electrofly Plus, a fully water-soluble supplement with vitamins, electrolytes, and direct-fed probiotics built for serious fanciers. Each serving delivers 19 billion probiotics. Yeah, that's right, 19 billion. Combined with key electrolytes and vitamins to support hydration, gut balance, and recovery. Used during training, transport, heat, breeding, weaning, or any stressful period when birds need extra support. Mix in drinking water, clean, simple, and built to support hydration, gut balance, and performance. Follow us at Electrofly Company on social media and order Electrofly Plus online at jeds.com or pigeonmart.com, or if you're local, pick it up at either Jeds or Pigeon Mart. Electrofly Plus. Champions take flight.
All right, welcome back into our first segment, and we are talking about health. And I know we've talked a little bit about it in the past. You kind of said with some of the feed and stuff and all, you mentioned a few little highlights to look for with your birds, especially with dehydration. But what would you suggest as you start raising birds and as you start trying to figure out which ones are being healthy, which ones are not? Can you give us more signs of a healthy bird versus a non-healthy one?
Yeah, for sure. So a healthy bird, first of all, it should just look healthy. In other words, it should have beautiful feathers. It should be alert, right? It should be looking around. It should be very active. Should try to fly away from you, right? Or be chasing other pigeons around. So that's what a healthy pigeon looks like. Now, what does a sick pigeon look like? A sick pigeon is going to be probably slouched on the perch a little bit. It's going to be puffed up, I would say, fluffed up kind of. It's going to just be hunkered down. It's going to look fairly ill. It's going to look like it's tired, basically. But if it's a part of the day when it shouldn't be looking that way, then that's a good indication that that pigeon may be off. Something's off with the pigeon. Now, the very first thing you want to check is its droppings. I know. We don't want to talk about poop, but unfortunately, with animals,
anybody who's had kids understands some of this. I mean, what you're describing, I think of my kids, I could always tell when they were not feeling good, just the way they looked. And that's what really you're talking about. And I've obviously some of that is what's coming out of them.
Yeah, exactly. And like with your other animals, dogs, cats, they can't talk. So oftentimes, we have to use other clues to figure out what's wrong. And a pigeon's droppings, say that the nice way, the pigeon's droppings are really key. A healthy pigeon's dropping is going to be a nice little round ball. I don't want to say hard. It's obviously, not hard,
Right.
but it should be a very nice little round ball. It should be mostly dark in color with a little bit of a white. That's the urates in it. And typically that'll stick to the perch. If you have the V perches, the little balls will stick to the perch. And nice little form balls. That's what you're looking right. Now, not rabbit pellets, but it's
Right.
it's different. But
Let me stop
anytime
you
you
a
see,
second.
yeah,
You mentioned the V births.
the V
We
perches.
haven't really got to that in one of our podcasts. Just quickly, obviously
Yeah,
it's somewhere they're sitting, but can you describe it just a little bit?
Yeah, it's just a type of a perch. Some people just use a wooden dowel that the birds can perch on. Basically, like a 1x4, cut it about 4 inches long, attach it to the wall, and the pigeons will sit there. But a lot of people use what's called V perches, which is where you have a little piece of flat wood, maybe about an inch and a half wide, that the pigeons will sit on. But then it's got a shield, basically, that comes off that piece of wood that'll come down like this. All right. And that keeps the droppings from falling on the bird that's perched below that bird. So they
Okay.
call them V perches.
And a
And oftentimes,
healthy, they'll
yep.
stick to that.
Well, they don't, or it'll roll off either way. But a lot of times, a couple will stick to that. Yeah, they'll be just tacky enough that they'll kind of stick there. And then the real healthy birds, when you go out in the morning, and those little balls have little down feathers stuck on them, because then the birds will preen, and the little down feathers will fall and get stuck on the little balls of poop. I know it sounds crazy, but every pigeon person who's listening to this knows exactly what I'm talking about. That is the epitome of health. When you got the little round balls with the down feathers stuck on the perches out there in the morning, you know your birds are healthy. All right. So what does unhealthy poop look like? Well, unhealthy droppings are they're typically going to be very runny, very wet, runny. They may not have a lot of substance to them. They may be mostly water. And then also the color. If you see green, greenish, yellow, yellowish, something is wrong. That is typically not normal. Um, so both the consistency of the droppings and the color of the droppings tends to indicate something's wrong, but not always. If I give my birds fresh grit, they get a lot of redstone grit. If they eat too much of that stone grit, the next morning their droppings will be a rusty red color, and
Mm.
and that's just from the grit. But they're nice little hard round balls, so I know, oh, that's just the grit going through, right?
Okay.
Now, if they were reddish color and wet, that probably wouldn't
Is
be
that
very
wrong?
good.
Okay.
Yeah, there'd be something wrong. And so again, later we'll get into what does those indicate. If they have salmonella, you're going to see it dropping like this. If they have E. coli, you should see it dropping like this. And we can get into some of that later. Today, I
Okay.
just want you to, just focus on general, what's healthy, what's not. So the droppings are a big one. Secondly, you can look in the pigeon's mouth. A healthy pigeon, when you open its beak and look in its mouth, you're going to see nice pink. You'll be able to see its esophagus. You'll be able to see the curtain in the back of its throat. You will be able to see its air tube. And I don't know what, I'm not a doctor, but you'll see it's where it breathes, right? That little hole
Right.
be opening and closing. The little air pipe. You'll see all that very clear. There won't be any mucus. There won't be anything in there. If a bird has something like canker, when you open the beak, you're going to see white, cheesy substance either growing on the roof of the mouth, the back of the throat, or even under the tongue. So again, that is something that you want to look out for. If the canker gets real bad, if you're not treating for canker regularly, it can grow so big that the bird actually cannot eat. It can't swallow, and then it's obviously going to be ill, and then you're going to see that it's ill, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Um, so there's some pretty good signs. Obviously, a pigeon should eat and drink. When you go in to feed the pigeons, you're going to whistle. You're going to make the noise we talked about, and those pigeons should dive down there and dig in. If you have a pigeon that after you feed, it just kind of sits in the corner or sits on the perch, then you need to pick that pigeon up and start looking around. Check its droppings, checking its mouth, isolate that pigeon. Is it underweight? So racing pigeons again are athletes. They should have a lot of muscle on the breast. The chest should be full of muscle. A sick pigeon, that muscle will just shrink. So, that's another indication that, hey, this bird hasn't been eating. Something's wrong
Do
with
you
it.
have? Do you actually weigh your birds, or do you just tell by sight?
Nah, you can't tell. You don't weigh them. I mean, I don't. I guess it's possible that you could weigh a bird. You need some way to make. They're not going to sit on a scale
So,
for you. Stay
right,
there,
that's
birdie.
true. So all of them
But
will be by
but you
sight,
could.
basically.
Yeah, mostly on site, and really, again, it's the fluffiness. If they're not fluffy, you're not really going to be able to tell they're sick. So a bird that's not eating, it's going to feel skinny. When you pick it up, you'll know right away. But just looking at it on the perch, unless it's puffed up, you won't know it because the feathers it's like hair on a dog. I mean, it
Yeah,
just, so you can't really tell until you pick it up and start really feeling it with your hands. And then it's super obvious. Hey, this pigeon hasn't been eating. This pigeon is definitely sick. But like I said, typically you'll notice it behavior wise first, and then you'll need to catch the pigeon and start to investigate. Checking all the orifices and feel its breast and its bones and just check it over very closely. And then, again, we'll talk about specific diseases and illnesses later. But if you have a sick pigeon, it's very important to go ahead and isolate that pigeon. Have somewhere you can take it away from the rest of its flock mates and treat it, unless it is a contagious illness that it has. At that point, you want to treat all of your pigeons. So at
mm,
that point, you can just leave it where it is. If it's not too far gone, that is, and you're going to have to treat them all. So
yeah.
it just depends. And like I said, we'll get into all that in kind of future episodes. There's a lot to know about all of that.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sure.
luckily, the
And we hope
pigeons
to one day.
don't get
And you had
sick.
mentioned you know a couple of veterinarians. You hope we can get some interviews with in the future. So maybe
Yeah, hope
definitely
so.
something they
Yeah.
could address from their
Yeah,
point of view.
absolutely. Yeah. There are people out there who are way more knowledgeable than me on what happens. A lot of times when my pigeons get sick, I still have to ask somebody like, "Hey, I got green poop and I got this. What do you think that is?" And
Yeah.
some of the more experienced guys, they'll say, "Well, it's this, it's this." So I'm no expert on health. I'm lucky enough that my birds stay very healthy. Knock on wood. I don't have any major health breaks. But I do have a whole medicine cabinet here, so I am really prepared for anything. If
Gotcha.
I get anything, I can treat for E. coli, salmonella, canker, cocci, all of them. I've got my respiratory treatments. In fact, I just put the old bird team on doxycycline and Tylosin tonight. They'll be on that for 7 days because I took them for a training toss today, and they were very, very slow. And I noticed when I was catching them that some of them, when they were breathing, were making a kind of a clicking sound. And so
Mm.
that is something else. A racing pigeon, you don't want to hear that sound. That
No.
means they've just got a little junk in their lungs. They haven't had any medicine since the end of young bird season. So since beginning of November, they haven't had any medicine at all. And so we need to clean them out before I really start pushing them down the road for training. And so those again are things we'll touch on later. How do you get the bird ready to go as far as medication wise, right?
Right.
So there's some things you need to do. Oh, something, Wes, I forgot to mention is pigeons can get worms.
Oh,
So
really?
intestinal worms, just like your dogs or cats can.
Okay.
Yep, pigeons can get worms. So you do have to worm your pigeons at least once a year. Probably more than that.
Is
Again,
that
that's something maybe
is
we
that
can
a
talk about with
liquid
the
or peel
veterinarian.
or shot?
It varies. We don't have shots. There's variable things. There's things you can put in their water, and that's what most of us use. That is either a powder that you mix with water or a liquid that you mix with water.
Okay.
There is also drops that you can put on the back of their neck that will kill internal and external parasites. Some people even use the ivermectin that you can buy at Tractor Supply for the sheep. And you can put some of that in their bath water. That helps clean them out. So people have various methods and medicines out there, but they sell actual pigeon worming medicines that are all basically water-based. Yeah, we don't have any
Okay.
vaccines for worms. Now we do have other vaccines for pigeon diseases, which I would rather have a veterinarian on
Right. Yeah.
to discuss PMV and all
Well,
those the real bad nasty ones. But yep.
so is there any other sicknesses that are normal? I mean, you've kind of gone over, seeing how they act, looking, examining the mouth, picking them up, weighing them, checking their
Yeah.
the feces, those type things. What else do you see in a normal season that's easy? I won't say easy, but things that you pick up on without having to take them to a vet. The wheezing you've
Well,
already mentioned, or the clicking, excuse me.
yeah, there's really only a couple things. There's either, they either have an infection, right, which is a bacterial infection. So
Hmm.
you treat that with an antibiotic. If it's salmonella versus, E. coli, you're going to use different antibiotics. And again, that's something that you'll need to learn or ask somebody about. So you've got that, or you've got fungal infections. So there's fungal infections, and they sell fungus medicine for that. Then you've got your canker, which canker may be, no, I think canker is some sort of protozoa. I don't think it's fungal. They sell us medicine just for canker. You got coccidiosis, which is something if people have chickens or poultry, they can also get coccidiosis. Luckily, that's not very common in pigeons. And then your worms. And then you've got the deadly diseases like your PMV. So that's really about the only one that I believe is untreatable is PMV. If they
Is
get
that contagious?
PMV is contagious between pigeons, yes.
Okay.
Now there is, I'm thinking very closely. I don't believe that humans can catch anything that a pigeon has. I know humans can get coccidiosis, but you can get that from handling like reptiles and baby
Hmm.
chickens and things like that. So, you have to wash your hands. First of all, anytime I go out to the pigeon building, the first thing I do when I come back into this house is wash my hands with soap and water
Yep.
before you touch anything in your house. It's just good hygiene practice, and you'll
Yeah.
be fine. The worst thing that people, and I know we're diverting a little bit away from the pigeon health to people health, but something that people probably don't know is the pigeon dust. The pigeon dust can actually cause something that they call pigeon keeper's lungs or pigeon keeper lung. I don't know exactly the medical of what it is, but some people that have bred pigeons their whole life from breathing in the dust of cleaning the loft,
Hmm.
they develop some sort of problems in their lungs to the point where some of them have to give up their pigeons. They can't have them anymore
Oh wow.
because this dust is, and I don't know what it is, and I don't know that we'll have anybody on to talk about it, but you can probably Google, pigeon keepers lungs or something like that and probably find out more information about it. I don't worry about it. I do not wear a mask when I'm doing the birds. It's just hot enough down here in the south to I don't want to have to be out there doing that. But I do know people that do wear masks when they go in their loft to clean. Just as an extra layer of protection. Who knows? Maybe we're doing our podcast 30 years from now. I'll tell you about how I'm doing. But it's just not something I worry about. My loft is pretty well ventilated, and I'm not in there very often. I mean, I clean and I do what I need to do, and I get out. So I'm not out there
Gotcha.
more than 50 minutes a day. But that is something. But
It's
people
called
do not need to be afraid of catching anything from a pigeon, as long as
fan,
you're washing your hands and
right.
doing good things like that.
It says pigeon keeper's lungs, also known as fancier's lung, bird fancier's lung, pigeon breeder's lung,
Mm-hmm.
type of hypersensitive pneumotis caused by inhaling proteins from pigeons' droppings and feathers.
Yeah.
So,
So it is something to be to be aware of. Um, but if you're concerned, just wear your mask like we all did during COVID and
there
while
you
you're in
go.
there and you'll be fine.
So, yeah.
I will tell you that pigeons do learn their owners' faces. So your pigeons will know you. So if you're going to wear the mask, I would wear it all the time or never. Because if I walk in that pigeon loft my face covered right now, my pigeons would freak out. They would be bad. They'd be flying into the wall trying to get away because they'd be like, "Who is
Who
what
is
is
in here?
this?" Yeah, so I would just kind of caution you about that. If you're going to
Okay.
wear it all the time, or just don't wear it at all. But yeah,
All
but
right.
yeah, as far as pigeon health goes, Wes, like I said, as long as you feed them well, give them good vitamins and minerals, um, good food, good water, change their water every day, disinfect their waterers. I disinfect mine once a week. Some people do it more than that, some people less. Everybody has their own thing, but it's just what I feel like is keeps them nice and healthy. And then, we add supplements to their waters and so forth, which we can probably talk about in future episodes. I think
Okay.
actually one of our new sponsors actually is a product that will help keep your pigeons healthy. So we'll
Awesome.
leave you hanging for that. It may show up right after I'm done talking here.
I'm pretty sure they just heard that one leading into it. It's actually pretty good leading into our health, but you'll be hearing them again. We're excited about having them with us and looking forward to some other ones coming on board. So
Sure
you can
are.
definitely jump on board also. We're all looking for sponsors. And with that said, we'll hear from our next sponsor and we'll be back for our last segment.
All right, pigeon people, listen up. And yes, I know you're out there. If you're tired of your birds giving you that, you could have upgraded me by now. Look, it's time to visit rpauctions.com. This is the hot spot where racing pigeon breeders buy, sell, and outbid each other like it's the Super Bowl of feathers. The site's easy to use, the birds are top notch, and the bidding gets, let's just say, intense. So do your loft a favor. Head over to rpauctions.com and find a bird that won't judge you every time you walk by.
All right, welcome back into the Racing Pigeon podcast. And Kevin has checked his yard again for his hawk. Did you tell me you did lose one today to the hawk, right?
Yeah, lost one yesterday, one today.
Oh, you lost one yesterday also.
Oh yeah, I've lost about four in the last week. So
So our next segment is on the loss of birds, and not only when they get attacked in your backyard, but we'll go a little farther than that. But hey, you put all this time in, this effort, got some money into this, and you are definitely not going to get out without losing birds, correct?
no, unfortunately not. I mean, we've mentioned before that they're wild. They are animals, and when you open the loft and you send them out there into the wild, wild world, they have to deal with anything that a wild animal would have to encounter, which is human problems, other animal problems. Um,
So what is a and before we get into how to deal with it, just how about give me a list of all the things that they're looking at, such as hawks. You say predatory birds, but what other birds are we looking at? What are the
oh,
human things are going by? Just getting
yeah,
tired on the race, that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
what
yeah.
kind of losses are we looking at?
Yeah, so you have your birds of prey. So, that's going to be different depending on where you live in the country. Certainly in California, Oregon, you probably have some different birds of prey than we have over here on the East Coast. The worst thing that we have over here is the Cooper's hawk, but a sharp-shinned hawk will also take down a bird. Peregrine falcon is your worst fear, because they don't come down; they take them right out of the air. Um, so falcons, hawks, some kites, maybe. The kites are typically smaller birds of prey. They typically prey on grasshoppers and mice. But if one got real hungry, it probably could take down a pigeon, and it will certainly annoy a pigeon. Pigeon will identify a kite as a bird of prey, and it'll freak it out. So they'll mess with your pigeons, regardless. Oddly enough, Wes, red-tailed hawks don't tend to bother our pigeons too much.
Hmm. Okay.
In fact, a lot of people actually don't mind having a red tail around because typically, if you have a red tail hawk family around, they'll drive away the Cooper's hawks.
Hmm. Okay.
So now, I'm not going to say that no red tail hawk has ever attacked a pigeon.
Right.
I'm
Right.
sure it's happened, but I think it's just not their preferred meal per se.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, so you got the hawks, you got the birds of prey. That's your biggest like predator. Now, obviously, if your birds land on the ground for any reason, then there's a whole host of other things that can happen to them. Cats, dogs, um, any kind of varmint that live on the ground that might want to eat a pigeon.
Right.
And then as far as otherwise, keeping vermin out of your loft. That's very important. Depending on the parts of country you live at, weasels, minks, raccoons, every one of them, if they have a chance to get in your loft where the birds can't fly away,
Right.
they will destroy your loft. They will kill every bird in your loft. You'll wake up in the morning and go out there and it'll be a murder scene.
Mm,
So but now in the wild, a raccoon or a weasel is not going to catch a pigeon. They're going to
right.
fly away.
Yeah.
But the hawks are the biggest thing. When you send a bird out, what I've been facing today, especially the babies, the first couple weeks they're out, they don't really know what a hawk is. I mean, it's in their nature to know, but they don't know how to evade the hawk. So they're just super easy targets this time of year. And this time of year, the hawks are breeding, so they've got hungry babies to feed. And what better food to feed them than a fresh dish of squab? So,
Yeah.
you know.
Gotcha.
And then as far as man-made losses go, I think we mentioned it in past episodes, but a lot of pigeons hit wires. So your
Hmm.
telephone wires, your electrical wires, especially the taller they are, the more of a problem that becomes. Pigeons won't really hit a tree, although babies, when they're learning how to fly, they certainly can clip a tree limb that they don't see, and they can bust a leg or bust a wing that way as well. Um, so there's all kinds of issues out there. And then obviously people with guns. Dove hunting is still a thing, and
Oh yeah. I have friends who
hard to
go hunt.
distinguish a dove from a pigeon, from a distance. And usually, it's you shoot and then it's like, oh, that wasn't a dove, but it's too
And
late then.
what is this thing around their leg? You should-
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, unfortunately, you know, it comes from all directions. You've got hunters, you've got wires, you've got hawks, all these things, come together that create this kind of perfect recipe for pigeons succumbing,
Right.
in one way or another. And like I said, I've been faced with that this week. I've lost 4 pigeons this week. To
And
my
and how
knowledge, all
does
from a hawk, but
and how does that make you feel?
it sucks. Because, like you said, I've just spent the last 2.5 months raising these pigeons, feeding them, taking the best care of them as I can. They're all wearing their chip bands, so they're 55 cents each, pennies, but still, it's all the time that I've spent with the birds. I mean,
It's frustrating.
um,
Make you angry.
very,
Yeah.
very frustrating because all that work is done. And like the hawk this morning, I mean, she pounced on that young bird before it even knew what happened. I mean, literally in 10 seconds, all the work I did
Gone.
was just gone. Was
But
just
this is
gone.
part of it.
And
This is part of being a breeder and
it
have
is.
to try to negate what you can, do the best you
Yeah.
can in making sure they're safe. But at the end of the day, you're going to lose some.
Yeah. And, just so people know, yes, before I let my birds out, I go outside, I look around all the trees. If I see a hawk, I know there's certain trees where they like to sit. I'll never let the birds out if I see them. But there was no hawk when I let the birds out. She just came out of nowhere, and that happens.
Well, they're
So
bird
yeah,
of
you
praise
have to
too, so
have.
they know how to hunt. I mean, so
That's right. What's really frustrating is when the baby hawks wean. So in like June, right now I've got the parents here. The parents are apex predators. They can take down a pigeon, like I said, in 10 seconds. No,
right,
no issue. When the baby Cooper's hawks wean in about June, the parents kick them out of the nest and they're hungry. They're super hungry. And when they find your loft, the baby Cooper's hawks do not know how to hunt yet, and they literally just torment your pigeons. They just torment them. They just chase them around, trying to catch one. They come close. Sometimes they injure them. They get close to catching it, but they just injure it. They weren't. They're really bad
yeah,
because they're super hungry. They're super persistent. They have a lot of energy because they're babies. An adult Cooper hawk will only chase pigeons for so long. If it doesn't catch one, it's like, hey, I'm old. I'm tired. I'll come back tomorrow. But a baby, I've had a baby in the backyard for 2 hours straight,
Oh my
chasing my
gracious.
birds around. Um,
Mm,
just they're relentless. And of course that freaks your pigeons out. So they
right.
scatter, they're scared to death. They're usually gone for a day or two. So
You're
um,
looking now like you see something. You see something moving around out there?
yeah, can we take a break? I need to go
Yeah.
outside for a minute.
Yeah, let's take a break right here.
Let's take a
We'll be
little break.
right back. All right. Well, we're back, and Kevin is returning from his backyard. Um, Bad news?
Um, Not great news.
Uh, Hawk?
Not right now,
Okay.
but repercussions of a hawk.
Uh,
So not
so,
good.
well, that's like I said, part of it. You have to be ready for that as you start breeding.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
and I'm sure you get. I mean, you get attached. I mean, I know you won't let us name them. A mutual friend of ours, always wants to name your birds for you, and you're always like, nope, don't name them yet until they win a race. So it's just a hard time. And just like any other pets, I mean, obviously it's a different type of pet than your dog or your cat inside, but anytime you have these losses, it can hurt some.
Yep, never fun. But you have to have thick skin. It's just it's like any other agricultural product. I mean, farmers,
Oh yeah.
they run into issues with their animals that sometimes aren't pleasant, and it's going to be no
Well,
different.
even crops. I'm down here in Southwest Florida right now, and my brother-in-law actually does produce for a living here
Oh.
between Florida and North Carolina. And I mean, the farmers down here talking about They lost three plantings of citrus crops during that last freeze we had across the country.
Ooh.
I
Oh,
mean, obviously it's not a living, breathing animal like we're talking about, but like I said, agriculture is agriculture. I mean,
yeah.
that's how it is.
Yeah, for sure. So these are just things that you have to be prepared for. So before you get into pigeons, just understand that, sometimes it's not always going to be fun, rainbows and butterflies. Some days are going to be tough, and you have to be mentally prepared for it. Hopefully the payoff at the end when you're winning races will be worth it. But this is the stark reality of the hobby. Is that our birds are out there in the wild, and they're not bulletproof. In fact, actually, pigeons are very delicate animals.
Right.
So, I mean, you wouldn't think just hitting a little wire, in the air, but I mean, I've had birds come home with two broken legs.
Oh
They they
wow.
they clip the telephone wire just right, um, and come home and they just land on their belly and they can't move.
Hmm.
And it's not pleasant. Luckily, it doesn't happen a lot, but we can't just gloss over it and pretend it
Yeah,
doesn't happen.
can't
So
ignore it.
you have to
It's
be ready for that. Yeah,
We want to
I
make
don't want someone
sure.
to get into the hobby, after listening to our podcast, and be like, well, they never talked about this.
And that's one
You
thing we
know,
want to do. We want to
um,
make sure we bring all facets to you as
yep,
we go through these episodes. And like I said, in the future, we hope to have a vet or two on, and some more seasoned breeders that can share some of their
yeah,
also tougher times. And
for sure, for
but
sure.
like you said, hopefully the good times will outweigh anything that you go through.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're dedicated to the hobby, they will. I mean, you're going to have bad days and good days, but that's part of the fun, I guess.
Yeah,
Not that I'm having fun today, not at all.
no, not at all.
But
Today's not the
but
day.
when I win a race, next month, we'll be in a better mood, and I'll say, you know what, the Hawk was old news, and
Yep,
nothing lasts. What do they say? Nothing lasts forever, right?
there you
So
go.
good days don't last forever, and neither do the bad days. And you have to
Good
have that
job.
kind of outlook if you're going to race pigeons.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, and thank you all for joining us for this week's podcast. We will see you again next week.
See you
And
next week.
until then, don't forget to write us. Give us some ideas what you want to hear about.
Yep.
RacingPigeonPodcast@gmail.com. And we will look for you then.
Sounds good, Wes.